Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now back in 2015 the R9 390 here was described as a GTX 970 competitor, albeit a chunkier and more power hungry one. This Sapphire Nitro version requires two 8-pin connectors and has a TDP of 275 watts with a suggested 600 watt PSU requirement. I bought this one for just £39, excluding postage because apparently it kept switching off. After 2 days of near constant usage, I've experienced no such issue, leading me to believe that this card wasn't getting access to the power it needed to run comfortably and consistently as part of its previous owner's PC. That makes this one of the best GPU deals I've ever found, despite the fact that it is now officially a legacy product, unlike its old Nvidia counterpart. While that is a bit of a shame, it doesn't in any way mean that this aging 8GB beast is obsolete, because it can still pump out some solid frame rates at 1080p resolution, 7 years after its initial release. Let's get into some games. In Cyberpunk 2077, I set the crowd density to medium to give Night City a little more life, and also went with the medium texture quality to crisp everything up a bit. I left FSR disabled and set all of the other options to their respective lowest, which has to be done manually instead of choosing the low preset, which will keep a few things turned up. This change happened maybe at the last update or the update before that. I thought I might need FSR enabled in order to average anywhere near 60 frames per second, but to my surprise the game hit this rather unexpected target at native resolution. There were a few drops here and there which I certainly thought would be the case, but I don't have any nasty stutters or large performance drops to report. The R9 390 handles Cyberpunk 2077 really well, and for the price I paid for the card, I'm really happy with the frame rate. 60 FPS in Cyberpunk is an achievement not to be taken lightly, especially with an older card like this one. The R9 390 does of course support DX12, so that means games like Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered will run, and run relatively well all things considered. I chose the low preset here but disabled ambient occlusion, as I found it to be one of the more demanding settings. I also enabled FSR 2.1, which keeps the image looking sharp even with the balanced preset selected. I found that there will be some moments of slowdown like during this opening scene, but overall we averaged out at 60 frames per second, and the performance generally ironed itself out after a few moments of gameplay. The very low preset or a more aggressive FSR quality option will bump the performance up a little more, but in my opinion these settings represent a nice balance between visual quality and performance. The R9 390 is holding up well, and the triple fan configuration found on this Nitro edition keeps things cool and quiet. You're probably looking at the Elden Ring graphics menu here and wondering why I went with high apart from the grass quality, which I set to medium. The reason for this was because the game seemed to perform with similar metrics no matter the preset I chose. I don't think this is down to the drivers, as we've tested custom or modded drivers in Elden Ring before with little to no difference in performance, so I think this is more of an architectural limitation. Still, the performance isn't bad by any means considering the age of the GPU. I definitely call this playable, but if you wanted 60 FPS then that's going to be difficult at 1080p with any settings. You'll certainly see that figure on occasion, but it won't be constantly. I think this old thing did alright though, and I was still able to enjoy the game like this. Here we are in Red Dead Redemption 2, or the Red Dead Redemption 2 settings menu, and as usual I've gone with the console equivalent settings. These settings get the game looking as close as it does on consoles as possible, though more often than not most mid-range graphics cards released within the last few years will be able to exceed the 30 FPS frame rate cap found on the PlayStation and Xbox consoles. The 7-year-old R9 390 is no exception. In fact, it's doing way better than I thought, actually hitting 60 FPS. I was certainly not expecting this result. again, and I definitely didn't anticipate the solid percentile low figures to go along with this decent average. The card still remained very cool and quiet here as well. I decided to ride to Valentine and cause some carnage around the town as I normally do, to try and cause some performance dips. Now we did see a few dips below 60, that's for sure, but nothing significant. This was truly a surprising and welcome result. Let's move on to the newest title tested today. This is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 2022, and what I like about this right away is that the game will tell you the R9 390 is no longer supported. Some games will say that your drivers are outdated if you're using an older card, but this actually tells you that the card isn't supported anymore, and states that there may be performance issues because of this. I think that's a nice touch. Anyway, the settings used here were pretty much all low, apart from textures which were set to high. This was a decision made possible thanks to the 8 gigs of VRAM, which was definitely seen by some review sites as overkill, back in the day by the way. It's certainly coming in handy here with the game making full use of the available memory. I was really pleased with this result as well. There were no real issues like the game warned of at startup, but these settings were definitely a good choice in my opinion. We are hitting 60 FPS, but don't forget there's also an option for FSR as well as other dynamic res options to consider if you want to get a higher frame rate from the R9. I always like to play it native where possible, and it's certainly possible here. Finally then, we have Mafia Definitive Edition. I'm using the low preset, which gives us the best result as expected, but medium will also allow the card to hit around 60 FPS. Low gives us a little more room to work with, and what I mean by that is that when the game does drop, it won't really feel any less smooth, as we still stay above or very close to 60. This is probably one of the best looking games to come out in recent years, and it's not too demanding either, even for older cards like this. The R9 390 is once again hitting that 1040 MHz clock and staying there, and usage wise it's giving it all, hitting 100%. So overall the R9 390 was a great 1440p card when it came out, and over half a decade later it can still play games at 1080p. Like a lot of other AMD cards, it is a shame that it's been moved to legacy status, but I guess that will have a positive impact on the price at least going forward. With that said, it's hard to gauge how long it will be able to keep up in modern titles, though community and custom drivers will surely be of some help. For the price I paid, I really cannot complain, and I'm happy to find that it does work as intended from the factory, all while remaining cool and quiet. The sun may have set on AMD's R9 series cards, but their memory will live on, and I'm sure many of you have experienced one of Team Red's solid offerings in the past, and have plenty of positive things to say. I'd like to hear about those things down below in the comments, of course. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like on it, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.